It's 2024 and One Piece's paneling is better than ever. I know from having gotten comments on my videos that some of you agree and some of you think I'm crazy. And why is that? Well, some people complain that the art has gotten less detailed, and that's true. The lines are thicker and rougher than they were 10 years ago, but that's art, not paneling. Well, some people complain that the panels are more small and cramped now, and that is where I would pause. It is true that the pages have gotten more dense, but is density bad? Are large panels all there is to good paneling? This is a channel where we try to look deeper than that. We look at the technical side of paneling, the tricks you don't notice, and at those, One Piece still improves year after year. Normally, I take a few standout pages from each chapter and break down their paneling, but chapter 11-19 was so full of great visuals that I want to use it to make my case. One Piece's paneling is fantastic right now, so let's get right into it. Let's start by talking about Luffy and the gang versus Mars. The page before it is great too, but we'll save it for later. This sequence starts by using Bonnie and Luffy's bodies to direct the eye around the panel, see everything important, and land at the next panel. Every part of Luffy's body aligns with the curve, yet he's still in a natural pose that conveys joy and whimsy. Even background details like the clouds in the background, the sail, or the sound effects in the panel before are part of it, and the marines we land at are aligned. You want to give the eye an interesting path to follow, which is why the giants curve down and up, in the shape of a smile, and why at the end we go up and down with Mars and Luffy. Luffy is on the left and Mars is on the right. The whole action sequence follows this dynamic, so it's setting it in our minds early, with the position of their panels and with the direction Luffy is facing at the start. It's a reversal of the usual pattern, where the heroes are on the right, to match how manga goes from right to left. But this can work if the pages know how to account for it, and that's what we're about to see. Since Mars is on the right, the eye follows his attack to the left. The one on the right takes action, but the one who commands more visual space is in control. That's Luffy here, as he withstands the attack. The dark shading on Luffy draws the eye down along the panel, and adds weight to his presence. That matches how round, thick shapes convey power and sturdiness. Together, they make him look like a cannonball, about to be fired at Mars. This page sets up more detailed positions. Mars on the right, Luffy in the middle, Bonnie behind him. But there's more. Sanji and Franky are behind him too. If you draw a line across Luffy, they are behind him on the page. There's exceptions, but for the next few pages, Sanji, Franky, and Bonnie are all either facing right or are framed with space to the right in their panels. Meanwhile, Dory and Broggy have space to their left. Space on one side implies focus and attention in that direction. So these framing choices tell us that Sanji, Franky, and Bonnie are going to help Luffy, while the giants deal with the fire. Let's draw that out. From right to left, it's Mars, Luffy, Bonnie and the gang, the giants, and the fire. Bonnie's gang and the giants are back to back, each facing the problems they need to deal with, and it gave us all of that visual information through framing and page layouts. It works in part because context, of course. We knew from last chapter that these guys are all on the ship. It would need more than this if the last time we saw Sanji was on the other side of the island. But I'm not asking you to pass a quiz on their positions. The paneling just needs to make sure you get it enough to follow the action, and I think it pulls that off without needing a big wide panel. Big wide shots can be great. They can convey scale, immerse you in a scene, and add special emphasis to a moment. But they can also fall flat if they try to emphasize something that doesn't justify it, and they can struggle to convey a longer sequence of events. The positions in this scene could be shown with a big panel, but then which moment would it show? Which dialogue or action would you cut to make space? And would it be worth it when it would slow down the pacing of the action? The purpose of a panel is to convey information. Wide shots are one way to do it, just literally showing us the positions, but there's a whole world of other techniques. Framing, directions, and page layout are giving us everything we need to know here, while simultaneously showing us what happens. You don't need a hammer when a screwdriver will do. That page also made sure to show Luffy's Noodle Arms. That comes in when he grabs Mars. Sometimes all paneling has to do is make sure to show the thing that's going to be used next. As the gang winds up their attacks, the eye travels left, aligning in particular with Bonnie pulling her fist back. Going left before an attack goes right makes the motion stand out more in contrast. So does going from a small panel to a large one. It's like we're contracting and expanding outward with the attack. The eye travels diagonally into this panel, pulled toward the dark shading of the impact. This is how you work with the heroes being on the left. You show the motion on the diagonals. But this moment doesn't feel like a conclusion. The impact is at the midpoint, and Mars is right there, All this space to the right he didn't cross. The effect lines divide the panel in half. This is a two-sided clash, not one beating the other. The outcome is in the air as we turn the page. Before the action concludes, it makes sure to put focus on how the characters feel. From Luffy's pain to Bonnie's shock to Mars squished against Luffy's belly in a cramped panel. The finale of the sequence works because the use of concave and convex shapes. Luffy starts as a circle, so when Bonnie compresses him with a punch, making him concave, we feel the potential energy. He could burst out at any moment, but not yet, because we can draw out the tension. We intuitively understand how rubber works. We know he'll bounce back out. So a bunch of close-ups in a row don't make it feel slow and annoying, but increase the sense of pressure, gradually increasing till he snaps out. He switches from bending backward to forward, telling us which direction he'll burst in as the tension rises. Like on the page before, we go left, then right, and the panels expand from small to large. After all that compression, Luffy returning to spherical form feels like a satisfying release. Unlike last page, Mars is actually sent a distance away. And in the cleverest moment of the chapter, it goes one step further. The attack comes from the bottom left, and when you turn the page, Mars is disappearing at the top right of the right page. The eye travels the literal furthest distance it could. That's how far he was sent. I think this action sequence has everything. Well-composed big panels working with cleverly framed small panels to make it flow, and a combination of shape language with Luffy's unique powers. The choice to put the heroes on the left, the opposite from usual, and make the whole sequence work anyway, is an insane flex. But One Piece can do a lot more than just action. If we're making the case that One Piece's paneling is amazing in 2024, then we have to talk about something even more important: emotional paneling. So let's move on to the page with the most layers out of any in the chapter. Let's talk about Stussy and Kaku. Stussy freed Kaku because of their friendship, but Kaku has no choice but to reject that connection. The emotional distance is shown through physical distance. The less you trust someone, the less you're willing to get close enough that they might hurt you. The sense of distance is enhanced by the horizontal lines in the background, but the panel below isn't as wide, so it puts them at an angle to get a little more distance out of what it has. That panel also separates their close-ups, increasing the distance between them on the page. In 11:15 and 11:16, Stussy faced away from Kaku, unable to acknowledge that she cared for him until she had permission from Vegapunk. Here, Kaku knows that Lucci will never forgive the betrayal, so he can't face her. But he can't turn his back on her either, and fully reject their friendship, leaving him at just a slight angle away. The camera distance is just as important as the character distance. Close-ups show true feelings, Stussy crying or Kaku frowning. Distant shots are used when characters reject their true feelings. Stussy getting a close-up is essentially her asking the scene to become a more candid one. But Kaku shouting "leave" at her feels almost like it's pushing the camera and her close-up panel away, shocking us out of our moment as he refuses to engage on that level. And the page ends with a shot that cuts off part of his face just as he cuts himself off from his feelings. I like this page not just because the paneling is surprisingly emotional for such minor characters, but because those emotions tie into Kaku's character. The member of CP9 who chose duty over friendship when he betrayed people he cared about, now making that same choice again when someone betrays him. Great paneling should convey the emotions of the scene, and great paneling should make the action cool. On the best pages, those are the same thing. Pages where danger, intensity, and triumph are important emotions the characters go through as they fight. So let's talk about the final page of chapter 11:19. As Luffy is distracted by Jupiter, Warcury rushes past him. The positional dynamic, Luffy in between the ship and the enemy defending it, has been reversed. Now Luffy is stuck on the other side, looking back to the left but unable to help in time. Warcury jumping toward the ship is a moment hanging in time, frozen as we anticipate what's coming. You look at this and you know what's going to happen next. The tiny panels that follow read fast, as larger ones would contradict how little time they have left. But they also set up one last release into a big panel. Not just an action moment, but something the characters will feel. Last chapter we followed the Iron Giant downward, framing it at the bottom of pages. Now we follow it from the bottom to the top, as it rises from the sea. The flow of this panel is clever. The eye is going left, but the heroes are facing right, with Warcury coming left toward them. How can the motion match the eye? Well, by angling the fist such that it punches outward, toward the camera, it feels natural for it to hit Mercury, yet still aligns with the upward diagonal the eye is following. The composition is X-shaped for conflict, and the lines of the X divide it into satisfying bright and dark sections that put the focus on what's important. The thick lines and dark shading make the presence of both of these characters feel huge. Even Luffy hasn't been able to harm the Gorosei. He only sent Mars blasting off again like Team Rocket. There's something so satisfying about the visual of something actually doing damage. We don't need dialogue to explain what the art can show. I think this page exemplifies what's great about One Piece's paneling in 2024. There's a lot of small panels, but they're being used cleverly, controlling the pace, giving us exactly what information we need. And if you want epic big panels, you get them, with clever flow, purposeful composition, and striking imagery. And all of that extends to the whole chapter. You got an action sequence with unique choreography that's creatively presented through intuitive shape language. You got an emotional scene that uses subtle framing and camera choices to express the flow and emotions of the conversation. Both sequences use the full toolbox of manga, knowing what panels it needs and where they should be. There's a lot I miss about One Piece's older art. Honestly, I still love the simple style we had back in East Blue. Any era can be your favorite, but when I review the paneling and study how much is going on in each panel, how many tricks of the trade are being used at once yet integrated perfectly, to make it flow, to make it feel right, and to make it fun to read, I find that modern One Piece shows far more mastery of the medium. And you could still prefer the older style with bigger panels and a slower pace. I just want us to appreciate all the advanced things it's doing now that it wasn't doing back then. Maybe somewhere there's a perfect version of it that has big panels when it wants to and does all of these advanced tricks. But for now, I'll appreciate what we have. If you enjoyed this video, I'll always appreciate it if you like and subscribe. There's a lot I wanted to talk about but cut for time, so if you want my full thoughts on the rest of the chapter, check out the Patreon or the channel memberships, and let me know in the comments what your favorite panel of the chapter was, or what your favorite era of One Piece's art was.